People are turning out against seeing a huge rip-off from Wall Street, knowing that our country had been severely ripped off, then there's no culpability to that. Mm-hmm. Seeing their homes being lost, seeing skyrocketing prices of healthcare, not a middle class that's in free fall, plummeting to the bottom falling completely out, living on the streets without any hope of ever working their way out. Students so buried in debt, no hope of ever working their way out of that debt. People so deeply indebted because they can't make a working wage that they have to live off their credit cards or take out another mortgage. There's a hopelessness that's descended upon people. And that hopelessness, it crushes dignity. And there's only so far that the human dignity can actually be crushed before it says that's enough. And we're reaching that point. We're seeing it happen all over the world. It's an explosion.
From the Arab Spring.
Everywhere, from the Arab Spring to most of the Middle East now, to what we're seeing happening in Europe. There's a deep sense of inequality. There's a deep sense that there's a elite few who are calling the shots for the rest of us. And whoever that is, or however that manifests itself, we're still in the conversation about it. But we have to come together and acknowledge where we're at, what we're grieving about, before we can actually begin to change.
You have the political system, that's one thing. The media, the role of the media, I feel like you can't really ignore that because media essentially crafts the way we view the world, right?
It does. It used to have a much stronger way that we viewed the world, but then this beautiful thing happened. This thing called the internet came around. And all of a sudden, people are no longer reliant upon one voice and getting their information filtered through one news organization. And whatever that news organization decides they want their messaging to be is what people take away and what people learn from and how people make their opinions and how they feel they're educated in the world. When you take that out, and this is direct democracy,
right.
When your people are actually able to speak to each other, they find out they're not so different from each other. We see things happening that we never saw before. It's like wildfire. There's 850 of these protests in the United States. It's going overseas. It's happening. It's happening all over the world now. That is a commonality in people. That's something that they feel deeply. And because of that, they hear it, it resonates in their hearts, and it moves them into action. Yes, when they see someone being clubbed, that moves them into action. Yes, when they see someone have to emulate themselves because of the poor, shoddy existence that they're living, that calls people into action. But also an idea calls people into action. And the idea is that behind this movement, that people, there's no equality. That there's a class difference, an economic difference. That calls people into movement.
Are we free in America today, in your view?
You're as free as you are free financially. If you got the dough, you could do whatever you want to do. If you don't, you're done. You're stuck in the system. And that's not right. It's not democracy. America was built on laws. We're a land of laws. But when we see these offenders, people stolen huge sections of our wealth, huge sections of our savings, when we see them walk away free, when we see war criminals walk away free because they're a politician, that we don't...
Like who?
Pardon me?
Like who?
When we see Dick Cheney or Donald Rumsfeld, who literally made torture happen in the name of Americans, and there's no recourse to that, then you have to say, do we live in a world of laws anymore? America today, if you're poor, you're in the system, you pay the price, and if you're rich, you do whatever you want.
But aren't we defending the right to be rich?
Who's we?
I'm saying, isn't the system, the country, the democracy built on, the right to achieve whatever you want to achieve?
Absolutely, but the top very minor percent is engaged in corporate welfare, while the rest of us are dealing in capitalism.
So it's not the problem isn't that they're rich. The problem is that the political system is influenced by the top 1% who
yes,
is rich.
Of course. Yes. It's not that they're rich. It's that they're influencing the system. They're gaming the system. That they're fight against the bigger corporations because they've gamed the regulatory process. They've gamed the politicians. They've gamed the system so badly that you can't have competition anymore. And that's what this is about. This is not an anti-capitalist movement per se. This is a movement about equality and a democracy and liberty and justice and the rule of law. Those are deep democratic principles that have been completely forgotten. I have my problems with the whole system. I mean, the whole way it's set up. You have to get the money out of the system. When Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter ran against each other, they took 0 private funds. It was completely publicly funded. Okay? What happened to those days? Why are we talking billions and billions of dollars to have to run for president? Where does that money come from? People say to me, well, it's the politicians, they're the puppets. And I say to them, well, then who's pulling the strings? If they're the puppets, then someone is pulling the strings. Who are those people? And why are they allowed to do that?
So who are those people? Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan Chase?
That's what we're all finding out now. We have ideas, but, there's never been a serious investigation into this. Do we really know what happened? Do we really know who did it? Do we really know how it came to pass?
But the thing is, you speak out about that in the media, and you're painted as a crazy person, a nut, a lefty communist.
You know what? I have no control over the way the media paints me.
And I'm just proverbial you.
No, or anybody has any control over them. But that's changing because they're starting to lose their
the gatekeepers'
esteem. There's only so much obfuscation the media can do before people start to get savvy about it. When you have 700 people arrested and nobody talks about it, or no one from Wall Street ends up being arrested for the crimes that they've done, then people start to say, well, why aren't they reporting about all these people who are showing up that seem to be talking somewhat about the same thing the Tea Party is? But they give the Tea Party, four Tea Party people show up at something and it's a national holiday.
Why do you think that is?
Because the message of this group is actually a populist movement, and it isn't being funded by the Koch brothers or Dick Armey. It doesn't have that kind of political agenda. This is not the Democrats, okay? This is not the Republicans. And so they don't know what to do with it.
I mean, if it's an anti-corporate message to some extent, do you think the established media outlets are threatened by it because they are corporate media outlets?
Absolutely. I absolutely believe that. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's business as usual in America. You crush what speaks out against you. You turn them into a demon. You demonize them. You make people afraid of them. Then they lose their credibility. That's why they want to know who's your leader. What's your message? What are you after? They want to know those things so they could just start demonizing these people, these human beings, struggling here, lost their homes, don't have jobs, covered in debt, can't find a job in America, jobs going overseas every single day.